Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about changes from the Department of Labor to the salary basis test. So there's been a lot of changes just in general in employment law lately. And this one is a fairly impactful change where the salary threshold for exemptions under the FLSA overtime standards is changing. So meaning one part of a two-part test is changing and will have an impact on employees that employers have characterized as exempt from overtime. So, what are some things that we need to know about this now that this law has changed, Russell?
Yeah, so some of you employers may remember this from 2016 when there was a proposed change to the salary basis then that ended up at the very last minute being knocked out in court and not going forward. But the salary basis, as you said, Sarah, is half of the test, at least under certain exemptions. So if you're non-exempt, you have to be paid minimum wage and overtime. If you're exempt, you don't have to be paid overtime. So for certain exemptions, and these are generally known as the white collar exemptions, so that's administrative, executive, professional exemptions. So if the person is performing job duties that satisfy one of those three exemptions, in most cases, they also need to satisfy the salary basis test, which means they're paid a certain minimum salary for each week, regardless of the hours worked. Presently, that threshold is $684 per week. It was $455 per week. It was going to jump to like $800 or $900. I think maybe $913 at the end of the Obama administration. That didn't go forward. The Trump administration increased it to its present 684, but now it's going to change again. So as of July 1st, so like less than month and a half, 2 months from now, it's going to jump to $844 per week, which is a little bit under $44,000 per year. And then on January 1, it's going to jump to $1,128 per week, which is or exactly $58,656 per year. So those are, I mean, you think about it going from 684 to 1128, that's a very large increase in salary. So who it's going to affect are the salaried exempt professionals that you have exempt now that are making less than $1,128 per week. So if you've got somebody now who's making $33,000 a year and they're exempt, actually it's $36,000 a year now and they're exempt, you're going to have to give them a raise to keep them exempt, or you're going to have to revisit whether you want to keep them exempt and with the option of being able to revert them back to non-exempt on the table.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to take some considerations, both from a financial, just running the numbers perspective. What's the overtime going to look like as far as how many hours they tend to work in their position? Can you cut the hours they've typically been working down to 40 so that you can avoid overtime? How's the employee going to respond to this, right? So if somebody's been salary exempt, then they're probably, they're not clocking out for lunch. They're kind of, just getting the work done how they do it. They're not tracking their hours probably. So there is an actual practical implication to the employees and how they might feel about this as well. Again, it's how they feel about it. They can't choose to be exempt or non-exempt. It's based on the law, but just also some practical considerations. So as you mentioned, Russell, we've got till July 1st for employers to be looking at this. It's right around the corner. So, a good place to start would definitely be to take a look at anyone who might be affected by this, just from a numbers perspective, and then start digging into the data and see how you want to address it.
Yeah, and a couple other additional points about the law. So it's going to go up to 1,128, but it's going to be indexed going forward. So much like we've seen here in Maryland with the minimum wage, it's going to be indexed with inflation. So it's going to consistently adjust going forward. It's not going to be stuck there till, somebody's Department of Labor, whatever president's Department of Labor decides to increase it. Also, there's a related exemption called the highly compensated exemption. And the highly compensated exemption is for people that are on the fringe of making out the job duties, but maybe don't, but they get paid enough that, hey, they make enough money, we're not really too concerned about it. Previously, 10 years ago, that threshold was 100 grand. it was increased to $107,432 during the Trump administration. On July 1, that's going to go up to $132,964. These are very easy to remember numbers, which is apparently there's some math that went into creating them. And then on January 1 of 2025, it's going to jump to $151,164. So to go from roughly 107 to 151, another huge jump. So that's either massive raises or a revisiting of the exemption status.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to pay attention to. These are big numbers. But definitely something to look at. Well, thanks, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.